Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So, for those who weren't here yesterday, I am an educator by trade. It is what I do, and I've been in education for almost 15 years. So, I'm going to pretty much run this the same way I would run a classroom. So, first thing I want to do is I'm going to take this off for a second. I have a couple lemons. I just want to pass them out. I just need you to hold on to them, and I'll explain them later. Okay, now, those of you that have lemons, as we're going through the program, I just want you to kind of take a look at it, observe your lemon. Notice if you notice anything different about your lemon, and just take account of what your lemon looks like, the size of it, and just the details of it. Okay. So my goal in this speech is to help parents and anyone that deals with children, whether you're a teacher, an aunt, an educator, an uncle, a cousin, just make our children aware of social injustices and to know that not only do social injustices exist, but there are ways that we can help our children to deal with them. Identify what it means to be just versus unjust, and discover ways to promote and teach within our community, within ourselves, and pass down those ways to our children as far as how to deal with injustices. So, first thing, pop quiz, okay? So in education, we have this thing called a pretest. A pretest is a way for educators to assess where you are. It's not necessarily a good or a bad thing, it's just a way for us to know exactly where you are, and it's a nice tool so that you are aware of where you are, and then at the end, we normally give a post-test, and a post-test tells the growth that you made. So, my first question is, what is justice? Anyone, someone, answer? Yeah, you can read the answer on the screen. Yes, go ahead. Good. So, in order to understand and practice social justice, we first have to acknowledge what it means to be just. We have to come to an understanding of justice, and then we can begin to impact exactly what it means to be unjust and what social injustices are. There are a couple other definitions that we're going to kind of unpack. Often in the media, we see injustice as far as in wars, oppression. We see injustice as far as police brutality. We see injustice when it comes to poverty, oppressive regimes, domestic violence, immigration, ICE. And I know earlier this year, there was an issue where immigration, they were doing random checkpoint stops. And that affected a lot of people in our community. And certain organizations came out and they did speeches and speaks and talks about what to do if you are randomly stopped, if someone from immigration comes to your home, and how to interact with them. So I have candy. I'm gonna throw it. I might not be that great of an aim, okay? All right. My next question is, what is race? Don't all raise your hands at once. This is interactive. This is not just me speaking. What is race? Huh? The color of your skin. Okay. Anyone else? Yes. How people identify race based on the color of your skin. Brothers, you're letting the sisters show you up. Thank you. Anyone? Okay. So, definition of race is a tribe, people, or nation belonging to the same stock, The other definitions are kinds of people unified by shared interests, habits, or characteristics, an actual or potential inbreeding group within a species, a category of humankind that shares certain distinctive physical traits, inherited temperament or disposition. Now, what does that mean? Because it doesn't necessarily say what color you are. And going based off of that definition, we could say that a lot of us all belong to the same race, okay? Race is a social construct. It was a psychological tool that was used to help create these divisions between people. Because as of right now, based on that definition, you may belong to the same tribe as a particular person, but you may not have the same habits or characteristics. You may have the same habits or characteristics, but you might not be from the same nation. You could have similar physical traits, but you may not be from the same tribe, or you might not have the same habits, or you might not have the same disposition. So, because of this definition, there is no true or absolute definition for race. There is no biological basis for race to describe one's race. But in America, just because it's a social construct does not mean that it doesn't exist and it doesn't impact or affect us. The reality is that marriage is a social construct, and it affects us. And there are legal ramifications, there are cultural ramifications, there are interpersonal interpretations of marriage and of race. And the social aspect of what race is how we pretty much live our lives in a lot of ways, because it is how we decide to interact with others. It is how we perceive the way that others sometimes perceive us. Now, this question. Oh, sorry. Next question is, who is a racist? What does it mean to say someone is a racist? Yes. Okay. Anyone else? Yes. So someone who makes assumptions about others based on who they perceive themselves to be, or perceive that other person to be. Okay. Bismillah, sorry. Okay, so the definition of who is a racist is a person who believes that a particular race is superior to another and discriminates against people of other races. Now, when I was doing a little bit of research, I felt like the latter part of that definition was the most important, because it's fine to have a sense of pride in your race, in your culture, in your ethnicity. It's fine to believe that that your culture is superior to others. But the problem becomes when you feel like your culture dominates others and you use that culture to discriminate against others. Now, most of us are proud of where we're from, we're proud of who we are, and we're proud of our race. But it's when that extra step is taken, it's when that extra effort is made to say that you are better than others. And that's who a true racist is. Now, I do want to say that I apologize if this makes anyone feel uncomfortable. And if you are looking at these definitions and you're wondering if this applies to you, if this applies to a relative or a loved one, it's okay. It's okay, because at least you're identifying it. And just because you identify that, hey, this does apply to me, it doesn't mean that it's permanent. It doesn't mean that it can't be changed. And I do want to say that I appreciate you if you are sitting in your own discomfort right now, if you're realizing that this may apply to a grandparent, an uncle, if anything of these definitions as far as racism and racist apply to anyone that you know or to yourself, and your willingness to accept that you have room for growth and room for change. Now, often when we are dealing with our children, we don't really realize some of the impacts that our own beliefs have on our kids. Now, I just want to tell a little story. A couple years ago, many years ago actually, I taught at an Islamic school. And it was my first year teaching at this Islamic school, and it was my dream job at the time to teach at an Islamic school. And so my first year there, first day where we had the parents come in and kind of do an open house, I had a lot of parents that came and asked me very specific questions. How long had I been teaching? When did I get my degree? What was my degree in? Did I have experience prior to in other Islamic schools? Did I have experience in any other schools? And I found it a little bit odd, but I just figured that maybe it was because some parents were a little overprotective and it was a new environment. Now, at the time when I taught there, every teacher was required to write a biography, so all of this information was clearly written on the biography, and a lot of parents would read it and then ask me the exact same questions that were already answered on the biography. So at the time, I didn't think anything of it until I went and asked another teacher who, it was also her first year. We had very similar experiences. This was her first year teaching at this Islamic school. She was brand new to the community as well. And I asked her, I said, hey, did parents come and ask you a bunch of questions about your credentials? And her answer was no. And all I wondered was, why were they asking me about my ability to teach when we were equally yoked, we had the same credentials, we were both pretty much brand new to the community, but for some reason, over half of my parents felt the need to ask if I was actually qualified to teach their children. A couple months later, I found out that they had an open house beginning of the school year. And I didn't attend because my children didn't go there at the time. I didn't have any kids. And so I didn't feel like it was pertinent for me to attend the open house where they were having like a town hall discussion about the school and issues with the school. And personally, when I teach, I like to teach my class and I stay pretty self-contained. So later on, I found out that the majority of this town hall meeting was about me. Now, just a little background, I was the only African-American teacher in the school at the time. And to find out that a town hall meeting that occurred and the majority of the discussion was about me and my ability to teach and my credentials, it flabbergasted me. The fact that these parents who I have now interacted with for a few months still questioned my ability to do my job. And it made me realize that there are a lot of hidden racist agendas, there are a lot of hidden racist ideologies that people really don't express unless they feel like they are in a comfortable setting. And they choose to say things and act in manners when they feel like they deserve to. Now, about halfway through the year, in November, when Dhuhr and Asr come in, and they come in pretty quick. So towards the end of the school year, towards like the middle of the school year, Asr would come in about 3:30. Now, a lot of kids are getting on the bus, they're getting ready to go, and my priority then was, I know some of these children have very long bus rides. I want to make sure that they at least get the chance to pray Asr, because by the time they get home, they're gonna miss it. And so sometimes I would have a student hold up the buses to make sure that my class could pray Asr before they got on the bus. And after about a week or two, I noticed that there were two boys who wouldn't pray. They would stand around, and the first time I thought, well, maybe they're afraid they're gonna miss their bus. But then when they realized, like, I have no problem holding up a bus, like, your salah is more important, I will stop that bus for you, and I will make sure that you get your prayer in, because by the time you get home, you're gonna miss Asr, and prayer is more important. And one day, I decided to pull them aside after we were done praying, because we had enough time, and there were no buses that had been called yet, and I asked them, and I said, hey, why aren't you two praying? I said, it's Asr time. I said, when you get off the bus, what time is it? And they say, well, yeah, Asr passed by the time you get off the bus. I said, okay, so why aren't you praying? And they said, well, our parents said we can't pray. Why can't you pray? Well, you're not a real Muslim. Okay. And at the time, these students were in the 4th grade. And I said, well, what makes me not a real Muslim? Because I feel like a lot of times when we talk to kids, we talk down to them, we don't talk to them, we don't actually listen to them. And so I asked them, I said, what makes me not a real Muslim? And they said, well, you're from here, you're from America. Okay. Well, I said, well, your parents are Muslim, right? And they said, yeah. I said, my parents are Muslim. And I said, you were born here, right? And they said, yeah. I said, I was born here. So how are you a Muslim and I'm not? And, they're children. They really didn't know what to say. But it was one of those instances where I can tell that it came from their parents, because their parents are telling them that for some reason, I am not Muslim. And it was in that honest moment I said, well, if you're Muslim, you're from America, and your parents are Muslim, and I'm from America, and my parents are Muslim, I said, then we're both the same. I said, so I want you to tell your parents that we're all Muslim. So we all need to pray because we're trying to gain the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And eventually those kids did come and pray with me. But the fact that we still have to justify, our existence, the fact that we still have to justify the fact that we are Muslim, no matter if we're from another country, no matter if we have lineage that we can trace, we're still Muslims. And sadly, this still occurs to this day, because my daughter, who's in the 1st grade, I work very intensely with her school, and I work with the PTO, and I work with a bunch of other Muslim parents. And we have a prayer room that our children pray in. And our little boys, they have Jummah on Friday. And I told all the parents, I went and spoke with the principal, and she said, you know what, this prayer room is not really being utilized, and I'm thinking about just kind of getting rid of it. And I begged the parents, I was like, listen, the principal's thinking about getting rid of our prayer room. We need this prayer room because we do have a nice size Muslim population at this school. We need to utilize our voice, and we need to make sure that our kids are utilizing theirs and that they are going in there and they are praying. And I said the one thing that the principal asked, she said that she preferred if they could go pray during recess and lunchtime. And I said, okay, that's doable, because a large population of our kids are under the age of 8 and 9. I said, that's fine. We will somehow work it out. It's not a problem. And her rationale was valid. She said the prayer room was in a different building, and she was worried about the safety of the kids walking across the parking lot by themselves, unassisted, into another building and going into the high school area to go pray. I said, I completely understand. I related this message to all the parents. Now, alhamdulillah, like I said, there's a nice population of Muslims at my children's school. And so I told all the parents, I said, hey, we need to utilize this prayer room. They need to see our kids praying. And, it's perfect timing that our kids pray at this time, because they will see other kids praying, and it just promotes each other to pray. And so in my daughter's class, there are a couple Muslim students, about 3 or 4 of them. And I asked my daughter one day, I said, hey, did you go pray? And she said, yes. Omar, who's an older kid, came and picked up Isa and I, that's my son. She said she came and picked us up, and he showed us where the prayer room was, and we went to pray. I said, oh, okay. And it happened like that for a few days and a few weeks. And I went into the classroom, and I remembered that there were other kids. And I told my daughter, I said, Asiya Noor, why aren't you inviting the rest of your friends in your class, the other Muslims, to come and pray? And I was like, when it's time to pray, I want you to grab them, and you guys all pray together. And she said, okay, Mama. So when she got home later on that day, I asked her, I said, how was it? Did you go and pray? And did you grab your friends? And she said, I tried to, but they couldn't come. The teacher said that they have to get permission from their parents. I said, oh, okay, yeah, completely forgot that step. But so I went and I personally messaged some of the parents that are in her class, and I said, hey, there are already a group of 3 of them going. Let your 3 go, and, it's more kids to go and pray. And so the very next day, again, I asked my daughter, I said, hey, I talked to the mom. Did you grab them to go pray? And she was like, no. Okay. So this is now the 3rd day, and I'm trying to figure out what is going on. So I always walk into my children's classroom first thing in the morning, try to get them settled. And on this 3rd day, one particular child was there, and I asked her, I was like, did your mom get the message that we were supposed to come pray? And she said, yes. She said, but my parents said that I'm smarter than your kids. And my response was, well, how are you smarter? And the child's response was, well, I'm smarter because they go and pray, and it's not the right time to pray. So that makes me smarter than them. And I said, well, sweetheart, that doesn't make you smarter than them. I said, actually, they get to have practice praying before they're actually old enough to be required to pray. So it might be 5 or 10 minutes earlier than the adhan comes in, but they're getting the practice they need to establish habits that they'll have, inshallah, for the rest of their lives. Now, all of that may have went over her head, because again, she's in 1st grade, but it just reminded me of my own experience that I experienced, and how here it is in 2018, and the same ideology is still being passed down. The fact that my own children, who are now 3rd generation Muslim, are not Muslim enough. All right, quiz time. What is racism? For all of you that just came in, I have candy if you answer my questions. So feel free to answer. There's no right or wrong answer. Yes. That's a really good idea, using your resources, but that definitely says racist, and we're looking for racism. But I love kids and students and everyone that uses resources. Anyone want to tell me what they think racism is? You're not too far off. Yes. Very good. Sorry. So, the definition of racism is prejudice or discrimination directed against someone of a different race based on the belief that their race is superior. Okay? All right, next question. What is colorism? Yes. I love that. Sorry, dear. So, the definition of colorism is prejudice or bias against a person on the basis of their skin color or complexion, and it's often against persons of the same racial identity. So it's where we may feel that someone is better because they are of a lighter skin complexion, or we might feel that someone is not as desirable because of their skin complexion. And this was a term that was coined by Alice Walker, who was African American, and she was a Pulitzer Prize winner for The Color Purple. So colorism occurs in all ethnicities. It's that moment if you're second guessing whether someone has a scholarship to do what they do because of the color of their skin and the hue of their skin. Okay? It's the belief that maybe someone is more knowledgeable because they are of a lighter skin complexion, or maybe their Arabic is more correct because of the tone of their skin. And this actually occurs in all cultures. And whether we recognize it or not, I never really paid attention to it until I was watching a Bollywood movie, and I saw that a lot of the characters that are the buffoons and the town's like clown are all of darker complexions. So it definitely exists. And again, this is just to make ourselves aware of all of this. Next question. Children do not see color. So that whole I don't see color. Children do not see color and therefore cannot be racist. True or false? Ooh, I see a lot of people answering. Thank you. Okay, yeah, that, I heard some answer over here somewhere. There we go. Okay, so yeah, that's false. It's not something that they are inherently aware of, but it's something and it's a condition that's taught. And we have to remember that anytime we are speaking to our children, because we are our children's first educators, and we need to think before we speak. We need to ask ourselves, is this true knowledge? Is it beneficial knowledge? Or is it something that can be changed? Because often we speak to our children, and I'm speaking firsthand for myself, we'll speak to our children, we'll answer questions, and sometimes we're not even sure if that answer is correct. And it's okay to take a moment and say, you know what, let me find out. Let me do a little bit of research, because kids respect that, children respect that, they respect the honesty, that you acknowledge that you don't know everything, and it's okay. It's okay to say, you know what, I don't know, I'm gonna find out about it. Now, we are all American Muslims. Most of us are American Muslims. And the Muslim population is consistently growing. It's growing at a rate of about 100,000 people per year. So not only are we the fastest growing religion, but we are the fastest growing group of people that practice a faith but don't actually have one particular race that dominates that faith. So we need to be aware of that statistic, because as we are trying to practice social justice, we need to know that we are all part of one collective group, that we need to stand for each other and stand up for each other. And Islam teaches us that, and I feel like sometimes that's lost between cultures and other issues that we may have. And we need to really speak up and speak out for each other. All right, true or false? And I kind of just answered this question. We need to fight and stand against social injustice more in Muslim countries than in America. Ooh, I hear true and false. You're just like racking up on candy. Okay, let's see. So, it's false, okay? We do need to stand up and speak out against injustices that are occurring all over the world. All of us are privy to the media. All of us are privy to what's occurring in multiple different countries and the atrocities that are happening to Muslims, but the reality is that atrocities are happening to Muslims here as well. And so often we remain silent, and when you are remaining silent, you are taking the side of the oppressor. And there's a hadith, it's from Sahih Bukhari. It's narrated, Abdullah bin Umar said, Prophet Muhammad said, a Muslim is a brother of another Muslim, so he should not oppress him, nor should he hand him over to the oppressor. Whoever fulfills the needs of his brother, Allah will fulfill his needs. Whoever brought his Muslim brother out of discomfort, Allah will bring him out of the discomfort of the day of resurrection. And whoever screens or protects a Muslim, Allah will screen or protect him on the day of resurrection. So often we don't try to protect one another. We find excuses as far as why injustice happens to others. We say that they deserved it, or they shouldn't have been at that place at that time, or maybe if they had been quiet, maybe if they sat down, maybe if they stood up, maybe if they listened. And that's not the case. We have to be willing to stand up against social injustice. We have to be willing to say what's right is right, what's wrong is wrong, and so often we don't. We make excuses as far as why that sister has a black eye. Maybe she didn't listen to her husband, maybe the food wasn't cooked on time. We pretend like things don't exist, but just because we pretend like they don't exist doesn't mean that they don't exist. And we need to be willing to step out of our comfort zone and speak up and speak out against things that are going on, because there are a lot of things that go on in our community and we all know about it. We do. We all know about the racism that goes on. We all know about the sexism that goes on. We all know about the physical abuse, psychological, emotional abuse that goes on. We know sisters that are getting beaten. We know children that are beaten. We know children that are going to bed without food. We know children and families that don't have housing. We know these things. And so often we all say astaghfirullah, or we look at them and then we keep moving on with our day. And how is that in any way acting like a Muslim? It's not. And we can't continue to act like this doesn't exist. We can't continue to have a blind eye to these atrocities that are happening, because they're happening here, and often they're happening with people that we know or that we're in contact with. All right, next question. In order to fight against injustice, I have to volunteer my time. True or false? And I heard an answer over here, so that's false. Some of us don't have a lot of time, and that doesn't mean you can't take part in fighting against injustice. I apologize, I didn't get the exact reference for this, but I just remember always knowing that Allah loves those small deeds that are done in consistency. So if it's something small that you can do and you make it consistent, then Allah loves that. And who doesn't want to try to get the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So we need to make sure that whichever way we choose to volunteer, that we do it in a consistent manner. And with my own children, one way that we volunteer, and it just kind of happened haphazardly, is we were driving around the city somewhere and they saw someone that was homeless standing on the corner. And their first question was like, why is he standing there? And I had to explain to them, well, he doesn't have any food, or he doesn't have any water, he doesn't have a home. And the first question was, well, why can't he just come to our house? I was like, no. That is not an option. They said, well, what does he want? What does his sign say? And I told my youngest son, I said, well, it says that he needs help in any way possible. And my son said, well, do you have money? I said, yes, I have some money. He said, well, give him some money. I said, okay. So I pulled over and gave him some money. And my kids at the time, I think they were eating a snack. And they said, do you think he wants some of this food? And I said, you know what? We can ask him. We can ask, but I don't think he wants that sandwich that you just took a bite out of. Like, it's little, I don't think he wants that. So next time we were at the store, they asked if we could buy some things and keep them in our car for those homeless people that we may see as we're driving around the city. And I said, that's a great idea. So usually in my car, I have a case of water. Case of water is like less than $5. And I'll buy cereal bars, or I'll buy fruit bars. I'll buy bags of chips, and I just keep them right on my front seat or on the floor of the front seat. And that way, if we are ever somewhere and they see someone, I can give that to them. And it's not a big deal, but it's those little things. And it's the way that my children know that if they see someone in need, that we can help them. We don't have to drive past them and just pretend like we don't see them out of our window. We can help them in those small acts. And whether they eat it or not, whether they take it or not, it's at least the fact that we are making an effort to help those in need. Another thing that you may want to do with your children, or children that you know that I often do, is shopping sometimes can be a little challenging with 3 little ones. So anytime we're at the grocery store or Target, I will tell them that if they behave themselves, we'll walk through the toy aisle. So nice incentive. But the thing that they like to do is, I say, if we see any toys that are really cheap, we'll buy them and we'll put them in our bin downstairs in our basement where we keep toys to donate for Eid. So they're understanding that just because you buy something or just because you see something nice that you really want, it doesn't mean that it has to belong to you. Like, it's good to give to others. So teaching our children at a very young age the concept of giving, the concept of sharing with others, and understanding that there are those that are less fortunate. There are those who may come to Sunday school or Saturday school whose parents can't afford to get them snacks or lunches. To understand that there are students in their classrooms that have food insecurities. And, for those of you that have children that are older, to make them understand the issues of police brutality and the issues of being aware of the police, and just noticing the inconsistencies that are even portrayed in the media when you have a black child and a white child doing the exact same act, and they decide to call that black child who's 17 or 16 a man, and they criminalize the thing that he did, whereas that white child is a boy. So it's those little things that we need to make our children aware of, because a lot of us have black and brown children. And unfortunately, in a lot of ways, our children are all seen as the same. They're all seen as others. And they're not seen as being a part of the larger majority of white people. And so when the police are pulling over your black or brown child, you have to make them aware of the potential consequences and the proper way to interact and react with them, especially since a lot of your children are at the age where they're driving or starting to drive, and to make them aware of what is really happening. Because so often we just believe that it happens to others, it's not gonna happen to me, it's not gonna happen to my family, and when it does, it's shocking. So we need to take those precautious steps as parents, as aunts, as uncles, as educators, to make sure that our kids are aware of what is going on in their surroundings, because so often we decide to live in a bubble. And it's great, but in the end, it causes a lot of damage because we don't know how to function outside of that bubble. Okay, next question. What is social justice? Yes. Justice for anyone when they're in a social environment. You're gonna end up with my whole bag of candy in a minute. Anyone else? Okay. So, social justice are issues that can occur in relation to practice of any aspects of society where inequality can arise as a result of prejudice or policies. Social justice is important because it promotes everyone towards a society that celebrates diversity and equity instead of demonizing it or creating situations in which diversity is not celebrated. Standing up for social justice could be more than just putting a hashtag on whatever post you're posting. It's more than just writing a post or putting an Instagram story. It's more than protesting. It's more than wearing a t-shirt with a slogan. It's about actions. It's about the actions that you take that will have a lasting effect on your children, on your children's children. It's about the effects that it'll have on us today. And in order to do so, we have to make sure that our children are aware and that they're present and they stand up against social injustice. Okay, next question, true or false? Injustice, bullying, and oppression do not have the same meanings. Okay, I'm just gonna throw a bunch of candy because I don't know who said that. Okay. So they do all have different meanings, but when you're speaking to your children about injustice, the easiest way, in my opinion, to reach them is to talk to them about bullying. They hear about bullying all the time in schools. So they're very aware of that concept of what it means to be a bully, what to do to stand up against a bully. And a bully is nothing but an oppressor. So because your children are already having these conversations in their schools and in their classrooms, it's time to bring those conversations and carry them on into the home. And talk to them about what it means to be a bully, how adults can be bullies to others, how adults oppress others, and create an open communication between your children so that they know that bullying doesn't stop in the schools, but that it continues on. And the only way we can start to truly make a change is to have these conversations with our children. All right. So there's one more question after this. And the attribute for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that means the utterly just is al-adil. And I just wanted to remind us all that ultimately justice is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because He is the most just. He is utterly just. There's nothing more just than Allah. But it's still our job to try to achieve equality and equity and justice and fairness in this world. Allah has afforded us the opportunity to be born in this country, so that means we have to deal with the good and the bad. We're living in this country, so that means we have to identify and know that there are good parts and bad parts. And just a reminder that the time for us sitting in our own little bubble of Muslims, where everything we do, we go only to schools that are only Muslims, or our interactions are only with Muslims. That time is over. We can't afford to continue in that bubble. We need to expand ourselves. We need to get to know others, and not just others within the mission, others outside of that, and genuinely know them. And to know that as long as we are trying to actually attain justice, as long as we are fighting against injustice, that Allah, at the end of the day, He is most just, and He will make sure that all things are rectified. And what we don't want to be is we don't want to be those that were sitting idly and not standing up against oppression. We don't want to be those that didn't speak up. All right, a couple things that you could do as far as volunteering to fight against social injustice. With your children, you can consciously donate, which means decide who you'd like to give money to. Like I said before, volunteering doesn't necessarily have to be your time. It can be your money. If that's what you have access to, if that's what you're able to do, then donate money. Just make sure you know the organizations that you are choosing to donate to and exactly where that money is going. You can volunteer using your career skills. So if you are a doctor or a dentist, there are always, I believe Mission North still has free clinics that they offer to help those that are in need. If you're a teacher, you can offer to teach classes. If you're an accountant, you could offer to help someone learn how to create a budget. You can show someone how to file their taxes. If you're a stay-at-home mom, you can volunteer at your children's school. You can volunteer at the masjid. You can be a support system for other moms. You can donate to food pantries or soup kitchens or domestic violence shelters. You can organize your resources and donate your time. And the majority of these things you can incorporate your children into. Another thing that you could do to help to fight against social injustice is to work on your own habits and beliefs. So if there are things within you that you feel where you have determined that you are better than someone else, or you have determined that this is not my fight, so I'm not going to say anything, I would say work on that. Work on that and recognize that your fight is my fight. My fight is your fight. And if you're not fighting with me, you're sitting down and you're with my oppressor. You can research different organizations. MashaAllah, there are so many organizations in Columbus that have so many different facets that they work with the community. And some work directly with the Muslim community and some work outside of the Muslim community. But you have the opportunity, wherever your passion is, I would say find an initiative. And if there's nothing, start it. Start something. But definitely take action in your community. And remember, your community is not just your Muslim community. Your community is also involves your neighbor, the schools that you participate in, the schools that you go to, and your job as well. All right, last question. And this is not something I want you to answer. I just want you to think about it. Ask yourself, have you done all that you can do? And then starting today, how can I do more? Now, for those of you that have lemons, I'd like your lemons for a moment, please. So these lemons, they all look a little different, right? But when I cut it, no matter which lemon I cut, they all look pretty much the same inside. And I think sometimes we get so caught up on our differences that we forget that inside and our actions, we're all Muslim. And we need to remember that as Muslims, like I said before, your fight is my fight, and my fight is your fight. And to teach our kids that we are all together as Muslims, and we need to all stand up and speak out for each other. Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Repeat it. So that is correct. So, for example, in Ohio, we're an open carry state, but many, many years ago, the Black Panther Party, they were in California when they first started. They were an open carry state as well, and it was Even though they were following the laws, it was the white officials and legislators who decided to no longer allow open carry to occur because now they were afraid that too many people were carrying guns. So it is about who has the power to cause who has the power and who is in power to evoke change. Are there any other questions? I just want to thank everyone for coming, and anything good or anything correct that I said is all from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and anything that I said that was incorrect, please forgive me, and those are all my mistakes. Assalam. What? Okay, so after Salah, we're going to come back, and Brother Abdurrahman Wood is going to come speak. Assalamu alaikum.